Are you done, or should I explain it again in simpler words? The room went quiet. I felt every eye turn toward me, felt my face burn as his voice lingered in the air like a slap that had nowhere to land. I stared at the spreadsheet projected on the wall, numbers blurring together, not because they didn't make sense, but because humiliation has a way of stealing your breath. I understood the first time, I said, keeping my voice steady. The projections are conservative because the market. He laughed. Actually laughed. Conservative, he repeated. No, what this is fear. And fear doesn't belong in this company. A few people shifted in their seats. No one spoke. No one ever did. I closed my laptop slowly, deliberately. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. If you'd let me finish, I said, you'd see that the data supports. Enough, he cut in, waving a dismissive hand. Sit down. We'll revisit this when you're more prepared. Prepared. I sat down because that's what I always did. Because I needed the job. Because rent was due. Because I told myself it wasn't personal. But something cracked in me right then. Quietly. Permanently. If you've ever worked under someone who made you feel small just to feel big themselves, you already know this story. And if stories like this resonate with you, go ahead and like the video now. It helps more people find stories that feel a little too real. Now, let's continue. His name was Adrian Cole. Senior Director. Untouchable. Brilliant, they said. Ruthless, everyone knew. After the meeting, I gathered my things in silence. My coworker Maya caught my arm near the door. Don't let him get to you, she whispered. You know how he is. I forced a smile. Yeah, I know. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was how deeply he enjoyed this. How carefully he curated the power imbalance. How much he needed it. Over the next few weeks, it got worse. He interrupted me constantly. Took credit for my work in front of executives. Rewrote my emails before sending them out under his name. Once, during a call with a client, he muted me mid-sentence and said, I'll handle this. She's still learning. Still learning. I had been there 3 years. The breaking point came on a Thursday. I had stayed late for weeks to finish a proposal that could save one of our struggling accounts. I triple-checked every figure, rehearsed every line. When presentation day came, Adrian walked into the room 10 minutes late, coffee in hand, confidence dripping off him like it was custom-made. He didn't look at me once during the presentation. When it ended, the VP smiled. This is impressive. Adrian, excellent work. Adrian nodded. Thank you. I pushed my team hard on this one. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I started. Adrian shot me a look. Sharp. Warning. We'll discuss feedback later. Later never came. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Every swallowed word. Every forced smile. Every time I told myself tomorrow would be different. It wasn't fear that kept me there. It was hope. The next morning, I printed my resignation letter. My hands were shaking when I walked into his office. He didn't look up from his laptop. What is it? He said. I'm resigning. That got his attention. He leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning the paper as if it were mildly amusing. You're emotional. Take the weekend. I'm done, I said. Effective immediately. He smiled. Not kindly. Not surprised. You'll regret this. I already regret staying, I replied. For the first time, his smile faltered, just a little. I walked out without waiting for permission. The relief hit first. Then the terror. No backup plan. No savings worth mentioning. Just a quiet, stubborn sense of dignity I wasn't willing to surrender again. The weeks that followed were brutal. Rejection emails. Silence. Polite phone calls that went nowhere. I watched my confidence erode, wondered if he had been right about me all along. But then, finally, an offer came. A mid-sized company. Growing fast. Good culture. Competitive pay. The recruiter sounded genuinely excited. The owner's very selective, she said. But he personally approved your hire. I didn't think much of it. On my first day, the office felt different. People smiled. They listened. My ideas were met with questions instead of dismissals. For the first time in a long time, I exhaled. I told myself it was over. I was wrong. By the end of my first week, people were already looping me into conversations that mattered. Can you take a look at this? What do you think? Your approach makes sense. Every time someone asked for my opinion, it startled me a little. Like my brain was still bracing for impact that never came. The owner, however, was a ghost. His name came up in passing, always respectfully, almost cautiously, but no one ever spoke to him. He worked remotely, traveled often, appeared only when necessary. I saw his signature on documents. That was it. And for a while, that was enough. I stayed late one evening fixing a client deck when Maya, yes, the same Maya from my old job, somehow already working here, leaned over the divider. "You look lighter," she said. I laughed. "I sleep again." She smiled. "Told you quitting wouldn't end you." I didn't tell her how close it came. 2 weeks in, HR announced an all-hands meeting. Mandatory. Boardroom. Big picture update, someone whispered. Owner might join. My stomach dipped, but only slightly. The idea of him, the owner, was abstract. A title. A name on paper. The boardroom filled fast. I took a seat near the middle, notebook open, pen poised out of habit more than need. The COO spoke first. Growth numbers. New partnerships. Then, "We'll wait a moment," she said, glancing at the door. "He's running a few minutes late." The room quieted. The door opened. I knew the sound of his footsteps before I saw his face. Measured. Unhurried. Familiar in a way that made my pulse spike before my mind caught up. I looked up. The world narrowed to a single point. Adrian Cole walked in. Same posture. Same tailored calm. Same eyes that once looked through me instead of at me. For a split second, I wondered if I'd imagined it. If stress had finally cracked something in my head. Then his gaze landed on me. It didn't widen. Didn't soften. Didn't flicker. It held. The room blurred at the edges as blood rushed in my ears. I couldn't hear what the COO was saying anymore. All I could think was no. No, no, no. This wasn't possible. He took a seat at the head of the table, fingers laced, expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was steady, professional, polished. "Sorry to keep everyone waiting." No one noticed the way my hands trembled beneath the table. He went through the agenda without acknowledging me again. Talked about vision, culture, accountability. The words felt obscene coming from him. Then he said my name. I'd like to hear from her. Every head turned. My mouth went dry. I stood on instinct, years of conditioning kicking in. He leaned back slightly. "Your analysis on the Halden account was sharp. Walk us through your reasoning." Sharp. He'd never used that word for me before. I spoke. Somehow. I don't remember standing straighter, but I must have. The room listened. People nodded. Someone asked a follow-up question. I answered it. Adrian watched. Not interrupting. Not correcting. Studying. When I finished, the COO smiled. Exactly the kind of thinking we need. Adrian nodded once. Agreed. I sat down slowly, heart pounding. The meeting ended. People filed out, buzzing. I stayed seated, willing my legs not to give out. "Can you stay back for a moment?" he said. My chest tightened. The room emptied. The door clicked shut. Silence. "I didn't know you own this company," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You didn't ask," he replied. I laughed, short and incredulous. "I quit my last job to get away from you." I know. That landed like a blow. "You what?" He met my eyes. "I read your resignation letter. Twice." Anger flared hot and fast. "Then why would you put me here? Why would you let me walk into this blind?" "I didn't put you here," he said calmly. "You applied. You earned it. That's not the point." "Then what is?" I stood. "This feels like a trap." His jaw tightened. "If it were, you'd already feel it closing." I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, "I won't work under you." "You don't," he said. "You work with us. With you at the top." Yes. I searched his face for mockery. For satisfaction. Found neither. "Say what you're really thinking," he said. I swallowed. "I think you followed me." Something flickered then. Not guilt. Something closer to regret. "That's not why I'm here," he said. "Then why are you?" He didn't answer right away. Finally, because losing you cost me more than you think. I stared at him. You humiliated me. I know. You broke my confidence. I know. You don't get to rewrite that. I'm not trying to. Silence stretched. I need time, I said finally, to decide if I can stay. He nodded. Take it. I left the room shaking. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed every interaction, every glance. Questions piled up with no answers. The next morning, an email waited in my inbox. From Adrian. No subject line. I will not interfere with your role. If at any point you feel otherwise, tell me directly. I deleted it. Days passed. Then weeks. He kept his distance. True to his word. No hovering. No pressure. But I felt him everywhere. In meetings where my ideas were championed. In policies that mirrored things I'd once argued for and been shut down. In the quiet respect that now followed me. It didn't make sense. So I started digging. Late one evening, I pulled public records. Acquisition dates. Board changes. My breath caught. He had bought the company 3 months after I quit. 3 months. Not years. Not a decade ago. 3 months after I walked out of his office. The realization settled heavy and unsettling. This wasn't coincidence. This was intention. And I was standing in the middle of something far bigger than a job. Far more dangerous than I was ready for. I didn't confront him right away. I told myself I was being strategic. That I needed facts before emotions. But the truth was simpler. I was afraid of what he'd say if I asked him why. Once you hear the truth, you can't unknow it. So I watched. I watched how he never contradicted me in meetings, even when others did. How he redirected credit back to me when someone tried to lump my work under the team. How he showed up prepared to discussions he wasn't required to attend, only when my projects were on the agenda. It was unsettling. This wasn't the man who muted me mid-sentence. This wasn't the man who smiled when I shrank. Maya noticed before I said anything. He's different with you, she said one afternoon, lowering her voice. Careful, but deliberate. He always was deliberate, I replied. She frowned. Not like this. I started having trouble concentrating. My body was on edge, waiting for a blow that never came. And sometimes, that's worse, because you start questioning your own memories. Maybe I exaggerated. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe? No. I shut that thought down hard. One evening, as I was packing up, I found him standing near my desk. Do you have a minute? He asked. Every muscle in my body tensed. It depends. On? Whether this is about work. It is, he said. Then added, unless you want it not to be. I met his gaze. Make it quick. We sat in a small conference room. Glass walls. No privacy. I appreciated that. I want you to lead the Crestview account, he said. I blinked. That's not a small assignment. No, it's not. And it reports to you. Yes. There it is, I said quietly. He didn't argue. You're the best person for it. You didn't think that before. A pause. I was wrong. The admission felt heavier than any apology. I'm not interested, I said. He studied me. Why? Because I don't trust your motives. That's fair. And because I won't be put in a position where my future depends on your approval. He leaned back, considering. What if it didn't? What if what didn't? What if your performance review didn't come from me? I hesitated. I'll assign a neutral executive, he continued. Final authority won't be mine. I searched his face for strategy. Found none. Just resolve. Why are you doing this? I asked. His jaw tightened. Because you're owed autonomy. By you. Yes. The room felt smaller. I'll think about it, I said. That night, I went home and opened my laptop again. Dug deeper. Interviews. Articles. Podcasts. Adrian Cole had always been described the same way. Brilliant, ruthless, emotionally distant. A man who scaled companies and left scorched earth behind him. Until recently. In the last year, the language shifted. Introspective. Evolving. Focused on sustainable leadership. I scoffed at the screen. Rebranding was easy when you had money. But something kept bothering me. If he wanted control, he already had it. If he wanted revenge, he'd be subtle, but cruel. Instead, he was restrained. The next confrontation came from an unexpected place. An anonymous complaint surfaced in HR. Hostile work environment. Past emotional abuse. Pattern of intimidation. It didn't name him. It didn't need to. I was called in as part of the review. My former company had merged with a subsidiary under his portfolio. HR asked gently, "Did you experience anything that made you feel unsafe or diminished under Adrian Cole's leadership?" My chest tightened. This was it. The moment that mattered. I thought of every time I'd stayed quiet. Every time silence felt easier than truth. "Yes," I said. The word tasted like blood and freedom. I spoke for 20 minutes. No dramatics. Just facts. Dates. Patterns. Impact. When it was over, the HR rep thanked me and said, "Your honesty will remain confidential." I didn't believe her. The next morning, Adrian requested a meeting. I arrived braced for retaliation. Instead, he looked wrecked. "I was informed of the complaint," he said. "I assumed you'd be involved." I told the truth, I said. "I know." Silence. "Why didn't you warn me?" he asked. "I didn't owe you that." "You're right." I blinked. I'd expected anger. Defense. Something. "Are you going to punish me?" I asked. "No." "Are you going to deny it?" "No." That scared me more. "I've stepped back from all personnel authority pending the investigation," he continued. "Including yours." "You volunteered that?" "Yes." I laughed hollow. "You really expect me to believe this is about accountability?" "It is." "And not about easing your conscience?" His eyes met mine. "Both can be true." I stood. "You don't get forgiveness just because you finally learned the language." "I'm not asking for forgiveness." "Then what are you asking for?" He exhaled slowly. "For you not to leave before you finished what you started here." I paused at the door. "This was never about you." "I know," he said softly. "That's the problem." I walked out, heart pounding. For the first time since I quit my old job, I felt something shift. The power wasn't gone, but it was cracking. And somewhere deep down, beneath the anger and mistrust, another truth whispered, one I wasn't ready to face yet. This wasn't just a workplace reckoning. This was personal. And it was heading toward something neither of us could control. The investigation dragged on longer than anyone expected. Weeks turned into a month. Then 2. Adrian disappeared from the day-to-day. No meetings. No emails. No quiet presence at the back of rooms. The company kept moving, but the absence was loud. And somehow, without him there, I felt the weight of everything he'd been holding back. Executives deferred to me more. Decisions landed on my desk. People asked for guidance like they trusted me with something fragile. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd buried until I was forced to step forward. One evening, after a 12-hour day, I found him waiting in the lobby. Not in a suit. No entourage. Just him. "I won't keep you long," he said. "You already are," I replied, though my voice lacked bite. "I wanted to tell you something before you heard it elsewhere." I folded my arms. "Go on." "I'm resigning as CEO." The words hit hard. "You own the company," I said. "I know." "So this is a performance?" "No," he said quietly. "It's a consequence." I studied him, searching for calculation. Found exhaustion instead. "The board accepted," he continued. "Effective immediately. I'll remain a non-operational owner." I didn't know what to say. "I won't be in your professional orbit anymore," he said. "That's the only way this ends cleanly." "Cleanly for who?" I asked. "For you." The simplicity of it undid me more than any grand gesture could have. "Why no?" I asked. "Because if accountability stops where power begins, it isn't accountability," he said. Silence stretched between us. "I'm sorry," he added. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just true. I swallowed hard. "Sorry doesn't fix what you broke." "I know. Some days, I still hear your voice when I speak in meetings." His eyes closed briefly. "I hate that." "You don't get to," I snapped. "I lived it." He nodded. "You're right. I hadn't prepared for this version of him, the one who didn't argue, didn't deflect, didn't demand absolution." "Why did you really buy this company?" I asked. He hesitated, then answered anyway. "Because I watched you leave my office and realized something terrifying," he said. You didn't need me. And I had built my entire identity on being needed. I felt my chest tighten. You quitting broke the illusion, he continued. I saw myself clearly for the first time. And I didn't like what I saw. So you followed me, I said. No, he said softly. I followed what you represented. That sounds noble. It wasn't, he admitted. At first, it was obsession. Control dressed up as curiosity. I wanted to prove you were wrong about me. And now? And now I know you weren't. The honesty was disarming. I won't pretend this fixes anything, he said. But I needed you to know I didn't change because of love, or guilt, or redemption arcs people like to sell. Why then? Because you left, he said. And no one had ever done that before. I let out a shaky breath. You don't get credit for doing the bare minimum now, I said. I'm not asking for credit. What are you asking for? He met my eyes. Nothing. That was the most unsettling answer of all. The next day, the company announced the leadership transition. Shock rippled through the office. Speculation ran wild. By afternoon, the board asked to see me. We want you to step into the interim executive role, the chair said. You've been operating at that level already. My heart raced. That's a lot of responsibility. You've been carrying it anyway, she replied. I thought of every version of myself that had been told to sit down, to wait, to be grateful. Yes, I said. When I walked out, Maya was waiting. Is it true? She asked, eyes wide. I nodded. She laughed. Look at you. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt grounded. Solid in a way I never had before. Later that night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the city lights. My phone buzzed. A message from Adrian. This is where I step back. I won't reach out again. I wish you the future you earned. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back. This was never about winning. It was about ending the cycle. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. No reply came. Weeks passed. The investigation concluded. Policies changed. Training implemented. Real consequences, not just statements. The company grew, steadily, healthily. And I grew with it. Still, there were moments, quiet ones, where the past crept in. Where unresolved feelings hovered at the edges of my thoughts. Not longing. Something heavier. Closure unfinished. Then, on a rainy Thursday evening, I ran into him again. Not at work. Not in a boardroom. At a small bookstore near my apartment. He looked up from a shelf and froze. For a second, we were just 2 people standing in the aftermath of a shared storm. I didn't expect to see you, he said. Neither did I. We stood there, words pressing against the silence. And in that moment, I knew the story wasn't over yet. It was waiting for a final choice. Do you want to get coffee? Adrian asked. The question was simple. No weight attached. No authority behind it. Just a human asking another human for time. I considered saying no. Not out of anger, but because some doors, once closed, feel safer that way. But I also knew this moment mattered. Okay, I said. But this isn't a meeting. He nodded. I know. We sat by the window, rain streaking down the glass. For a while, we didn't talk. And strangely, it wasn't uncomfortable. I never apologized properly, he said finally. You apologized, I replied. I acknowledged harm, he corrected. That's not the same thing. I waited. I'm sorry for the way I treated you, he said. Not as an employee. As a person. I reduced you to something smaller so I could feel bigger. The words landed clean. No defense. No justification. That version of you cost me years, I said quietly. Even after I left. I know, he said. And I don't expect forgiveness. Good. A pause. But I do want to tell you what I've learned, he continued. Power doesn't reveal who you are. It amplifies it. And I didn't like the sound of my own echo. I studied him. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something raw. Not humility as performance, but as consequence. I don't want a relationship, I said. Of any kind that confuses the past. I'm not asking for one. Not friendship. Not romance. Not mentorship. He nodded again. Understood. What I want, I continued, is to know that when I walk away from this table, you don't follow me again. He met my eyes. I won't. And that when people talk about your transformation, I added, they're not using my pain as your origin story. He exhaled. I won't let them. That was the boundary. And he respected it. We stood. He paid. I didn't argue. At the door, he hesitated. For what it's worth, you were always exceptional. I held his gaze. I know. And for the first time, saying it didn't feel like defiance. It felt like fact. I walked home lighter than I'd felt in years. Not because he changed, but because I didn't need him to anymore. Months later, the interim role became permanent. The day the board made it official, I stood in front of the same glass walls where I'd once been silenced. My voice didn't shake. My hands were steady. This company will not reward brilliance that harms people, I said. We don't grow by shrinking others. People nodded. Some looked relieved. Some looked challenged. Good. That night, alone in my office, I found my old resignation letter in a folder I'd never deleted. I read it once. Then I closed the file and archived it. Some chapters don't need revisiting. I never saw Adrian again after that day in the bookstore. But occasionally, I'd hear about him. Working quietly. Consulting. No spotlight. No speeches. And I hoped genuinely that he kept doing the work. As for me, I stopped flinching when I spoke. I stopped apologizing for taking space. I stopped mistaking endurance for strength. Leaving wasn't failure. It was the first decision I ever made purely for myself. And it changed everything. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever walked away from a place that tried to make you smaller, take a second to like this video. It helps stories like this reach people who need them. And if you want more stories about reclaiming power, healing quietly, and choosing yourself even when it's hard, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear from you too. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to leave something you worked hard for just to protect your peace? Thank you for staying till the end. Until next time, this is Soul Storyverse TV.